The wind was supposed to bring spring that night, but instead, it carried a cry. In the heart of Wyoming's wilderness, a storm was breaking, and with it came a woman on the edge of collapse, clutching her coat against the cold. When Logan Hayes, a former Navy SEAL who had sworn never to save anyone again, opened his cabin door, he didn't expect to find Ava Collins, frozen, terrified, and carrying a secret that neither of them yet knew would change both their lives forever. What began as an act of mercy soon became a test of faith. Because when her past came knocking, armed with lies and cruelty, Logan had to make a choice: to walk away as he always had, or to stand and fight for the woman who had unknowingly brought peace back to his storm. Before you dive into their story of survival, love, and redemption, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Or just write Amen for all the hearts still waiting to find their safe place. The storm had rolled in faster than any Logan Hayes could remember. Snow clawed sideways across the valley, swallowing his small cabin until it looked like a dim lantern lost inside a sea of white. The wind moaned through the eaves, shaking loose old icicles that shattered on the porch like breaking glass. Inside, Logan stoked the fire with steady hands. The years had given him those hands. Strong, veined, scarred from places no one in Wind River talked about. He was 35, broad-shouldered, with a lean frame carved by work and solitude. His beard was trimmed short, streaked faintly with gray at the chin, and his dark hair curled slightly under the wool cap he still hadn't bothered to remove. The heat of the flames painted his face in amber, catching on the faint line that cut from the corner of his left eye down to his jaw, a memory of shrapnel and a mission gone wrong. That single scar, like a pale thread, marked the day he lost 3 of his men in Afghanistan. Since then, silence had been his chosen company. Only Ranger remained, a 4-year-old German shepherd with a thick sable coat and intelligent amber eyes. Ranger had been trained in the service too, a K-9 who'd once sniffed out explosives. The military had retired him after an injury in the hind leg, and Logan took him in. They moved like mirrored shadows, disciplined, alert, and wordlessly loyal. Tonight, even Ranger was uneasy. The dog paced near the door, hackles raised, ears twitching toward the howling wind. "Easy, boy," Logan muttered, stirring the stew on the stove. "Ain't nobody out there dumb enough to be on this road tonight." Then came it, a faint, hollow sound beneath the scream of the storm. Thud, thud, thud. 3 knocks. Ranger froze, then barked once, sharp and low. Logan straightened, every instinct, military and primal, snapping to attention. He grabbed the shotgun leaning against the wall and moved to the door. "Probably a branch," he said, mostly to convince himself. But then he heard it again. Softer this time. Human. When he cracked open the door, the wind punched through like a living thing. Snow blasted across the room, extinguishing the nearest lamp. And there, framed by the white chaos, was a woman, swaying, small against the darkness. She couldn't have been more than 27. Long chestnut hair had escaped her hood, plastered to a face ghost pale from the cold. Her coat hung open, one sleeve torn, and her lips were the color of bruised violets. She clutched a small canvas bag to her chest as if it were life itself. "Please," she whispered, her voice brittle as glass. "Help." She collapsed before he could answer. Logan lunged forward, catching her just before she hit the porch. She weighed next to nothing, a bundle of ice and fabric. Without thinking, he carried her inside, kicked the door shut, and laid her on the rug near the hearth. "Ranger, blanket, go." The dog barked once and bounded to the cot, dragging the wool blanket in his jaws. Logan spread it over the woman, then pulled off her wet boots and coat, careful not to jolt her. Her hands were stiff, fingers chalk white. He rubbed her arms to coax warmth, then poured a small measure of whiskey between her lips. She coughed weakly, eyelids fluttering open. Her eyes, green, clear, and startled, met his. "You're all right," he said quietly. "You're safe now." It took a moment before she spoke, voice trembling. "Where am I?" "Wind River Valley," he replied. "Wyoming. Your lucky ranger heard you. Blizzard like this, another hour, and you'd be gone." She looked toward the dog, who now sat beside her, ears perked, watching her every move. "He saved me," she whispered. "He's beautiful." Logan nodded. "He's stubborn. Same thing sometimes." For a while, neither spoke. The fire hissed, snow hammered the windows. When the woman tried to sit up, he steadied her shoulder gently. "Take it slow." "I'm Ava," she said finally, breath still shaky. "Ava Collins." "Logan Hayes," he replied. "You from around here?" She shook her head. "No, from Utah originally. I came here with someone. My fiancé." Her voice caught. "He left me out there." Logan frowned, studying her. She seemed fragile. Small features, delicate nose, but her eyes held a flicker of defiance. "Left you? In this storm?" Ava nodded, eyes glistening. "He was angry. We argued on the road to his ranch. He said I wasn't what he expected." She gave a faint, bitter laugh. "He told me to get out. I thought he was bluffing, but then he drove away." "What's his name?" Logan asked, his tone low but steady. "Derek Blackwell," she said. "He owns a ranch west of here. People said he was generous, hard-working. I thought—" Her sentence died in her throat. Logan didn't push. He'd met too many Dereks in his life. Men who looked strong but broke others to feel powerful. He ladled out a bowl of hot stew and handed it to her. "Eat. We'll talk after." She hesitated, then took a cautious spoonful. The warmth brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she murmured. He sat opposite her, elbows on knees, watching the snow whip against the window. "Storm'll trap us here for a day or two," he said. "You can stay as long as you need." "I don't want to be trouble," she said. He gave a half smile, rough around the edges. "You already are, but I've had worse." Ranger wagged his tail, curling up between them. Ava reached out tentatively, brushing her fingers over his thick fur. "He's gentle," she said softly. "Only with the ones who deserve it." Later, when Ava had fallen asleep on the cot, Logan tossed another log into the fire and sat in silence. The storm still raged outside, but inside the cabin, a different kind of quiet had settled. The kind that comes after a battle when no one speaks, only breathes. He looked at the sleeping woman. Her face, once tense with fear, had softened in the glow of the flames. She clutched her small bag close even in sleep. He wondered what was inside. Money, maybe, or a keepsake from the life she'd just lost. Ranger lifted his head, meeting Logan's eyes as if to ask a silent question. "I know," Logan said quietly. "We're not keeping her, just until the storm passes." The dog tilted his head, unconvinced. Outside, the wind howled on, relentless, cold, and merciless. But inside that small cabin, there was warmth again, and for the first time in years, Logan felt something stir beneath the layers of frost around his heart. Not pity, not duty. Something gentler. Something he couldn't yet name. He reached down, patting Ranger's head. "Keep watch, boy." The dog settled by the door, eyes half open, listening to the storm fade. Logan leaned back in his chair, gaze on the fire, and murmured to himself, "Guess the mountain brought us a storm, and something else with it." Morning crept in slow and pale, its light filtered through layers of frost clinging to the cabin windows. The world outside was buried. The snow had swallowed fences, trees, and even the narrow trail that led down to the valley road. The storm had left behind an eerie calm, like the land itself was holding its breath. Logan Hayes stood at the stove, pouring steaming coffee into a chipped enamel mug. He wore a flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves, the muscles in his forearms shifting like corded ropes as he moved. His beard was dusted with frost from stepping outside to shovel the porch, and his eyes, a muted gray blue, were as steady as the mountains themselves. He glanced toward the cot near the fire. Ava Collins stirred beneath the blanket, her face half hidden by her tangled brown hair. When she finally sat up, the expression on her face was confusion first, then relief, the kind that came from realizing she was still alive. "You slept through the worst of it," Logan said, handing her the mug. "It's strong. Might even stand on its own if you drop it." Ava smiled faintly. "After last night, I'll take anything warm." Her voice was soft but raspy, the sound of someone unused to speaking freely. She looked around the cabin, shelves lined with tools, firewood stacked neatly, a single framed photograph of a younger Logan in uniform beside a dark-haired man. Her gaze lingered there, curious but polite enough not to ask. Logan noticed. "Teammate," he said simply. "Didn't make it home." She nodded, her hands wrapping tighter around the mug. "I'm sorry." He shrugged. "We all leave something behind." For a while, silence settled between them. Not awkward, just heavy with unspoken things. Ranger broke it, padding over from the door and resting his chin on Ava's knee. His fur shimmered bronze in the firelight, and when she reached to scratch behind his ear, he closed his eyes with a low, satisfied hum. "He likes you," Logan said. "Doesn't take too many people." "Guess we both needed saving," Ava replied quietly. Outside, the wind had calmed, but the snow piled high against the windows showed they weren't going anywhere soon. Logan put on his heavy coat and opened the door just long enough to check the drifts. The cold bit at his face instantly, sharp as glass. "Road's gone," he muttered when he came back in. "Might be 2-3 days before it clears." Ava nodded. "I'm not in a hurry to go anywhere." Her tone carried something more than exhaustion. Maybe fear, maybe resignation. Logan heard it, but didn't pry. He'd learned long ago that broken people needed quiet more than questions. As the hours passed, they fell into a rhythm. Logan fixed the leaky stovepipe. Ava insisted on washing the dishes, her small frame moving carefully in his oversized flannel shirt. She tied her hair up in a messy knot, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her hands were soft, city hands, but she worked like someone determined to earn her place. "You don't have to," Logan said. "I know," she replied, rinsing a plate. "But I need to do something. Sitting still makes me feel helpless." He didn't argue. He understood. At noon, the sound of an engine faintly echoed from somewhere down the mountain. Logan stepped outside again and spotted a dark pickup in the distance, half buried in snow. The engine coughed, then went silent. He couldn't see the driver, but a chill prickled at the back of his neck. Back inside, Ava noticed his expression tighten. "Is something wrong?" "Probably nothing," he said, though his tone betrayed doubt. "Truck down the road. Could be a rancher checking the power lines." Ava froze, the color draining from her face. "He drives a black Chevy," she whispered. Logan's jaw clenched. "Derek?" She nodded slowly. He walked to the window and peered through a crack in the frost, every instinct alert. Ranger stood beside him, ears pricked, tail rigid, but the pickup didn't move again. After a long moment, Logan turned back. "If he's smart, he'll head home," he said. "You don't worry about him right now." Ava wanted to believe him, but her hands trembled as she picked up her notebook from her bong, a small, worn leather journal, and began writing. The scratching of her pen filled the room. "What's that?" Logan asked. "My plan," she said without looking up. "If I ever get out of this mess, things I can control." Logan nodded, almost approvingly. "Good. Plans keep you sane." She smiled weakly. "Do you still make them?" "Not much to plan for these days," he admitted. "Mostly just keep the roof from leaking and the fire from dying." Ava studied him quietly. Beneath the quiet composure, she saw a man whose life had been built on structure and shattered by loss. It wasn't loneliness that defined him. It was the discipline of survival. By evening, the temperature dropped again. Logan made stew from venison and beans, the smell filling the cabin. They ate in near silence, interrupted only by Ranger's sighs as he stretched by the fire. Afterward, Logan cleaned the pot while Ava folded the blanket on the cot. When she bent down, dizziness hit her hard. She pressed a hand to her forehead. "You all right?" he asked immediately, stepping closer. "Just stood up too fast," she murmured, forcing a smile. But a few minutes later, when she tried to stand again, she turned pale and bolted for the washroom. The sound of retching broke the quiet. Logan waited outside the door, brow furrowed. "You sick?" "I think it's nerves," she said, her voice faint. "And no sleep. I'll be fine." He fetched a bottle of water and a packet of anti-nausea pills from the small cabinet. "Here, take one. Rest, okay?" She took them, grateful, and lay back on the cot. The firelight flickered over her tired face. "You really don't have to look after me," she whispered. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to," he said, adjusting the blanket over her. "Storm like this, we look out for each other, or nobody makes it." She smiled faintly. "You sound like a soldier." "Used to be." "Used to be?" He hesitated, staring into the flames. "Now I just try to be decent." For a while, only the crackle of fire filled the room. Ranger lay near the door, half asleep, ears twitching whenever the wind groaned outside. Logan sat in the old rocking chair, his gaze drifting between the woman and the window. Something in his chest, that hard, empty place that had gone untouched for years, ached softly. When he'd left the Navy, he'd sworn off the world. No attachments, no rescues, no more people to lose. But tonight, seeing Ava curled up by the fire, he realized the vow was breaking. He didn't understand why. Maybe it was the way she kept her dignity even while falling apart, or how Ranger guarded her like family already. But he felt the old instinct returning, the need to protect. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "Just until she's safe." Ranger lifted his head, one golden eye opening, as if doubting him. "Yeah," Logan said under his breath. "I know. That's what I said the last time, too." Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft, silent, almost tender. And inside that small cabin, a man who had given up on the world found himself breaking one more promise he never thought he'd break. The snow had begun to soften, retreating into thin ribbons of water that glistened along the frozen path. After a week trapped together in the cabin, the world outside finally looked alive again. The air smelled of pine and thawing earth, and the river below the ridge murmured faintly under the ice. Logan Hayes stood on the porch, leaning against a wooden post with a coffee mug steaming in his hand. His breath mingled with the mist. Behind him, the door creaked open, and Ava Collins stepped outside, wrapped in one of his flannel shirts that hung almost to her knees. Her cheeks had color again, faint but real. She still looked fragile, like something that might fade if the wind turned cruel, yet her eyes had regained a quiet focus. "Morning," she said, her voice gentler now. "Morning," Logan replied, glancing at the pale sky. "Storm's over for good. Sheriff Mason's supposed to drop by today." She hesitated. "Should I be worried?" He shook his head. "Just routine. He wants to make sure you're safe." Ava nodded, running her fingers through her hair. Dark brown, wavy, still a little tangled. For a second, she looked like someone trying to piece herself back together, thread by thread. Ranger bounded out after her, the 4-year-old German shepherd trotting with that confident gait of a soldier on patrol. His thick coat shimmered gold in the morning light. He circled the porch once, then came to rest at her feet, pressing his head gently against her leg. "He's your shadow," Logan said, amused. "I think he knows something," Ava murmured. She crouched down, scratching the soft fur behind Ranger's ear. "He keeps doing that, like he's checking on me." Ranger huffed in response, tail thumping once. Logan smiled faintly. "He just likes you. You've got that effect on strays." She looked up at him, her eyes catching the sunlight. "You mean you?" He almost laughed. "Maybe." Before either could say more, a truck's engine rumbled in the distance. It climbed the hill, crunching over wet gravel, until a familiar figure stepped out. Sheriff Mason Cole was in his early 50s, built like the Wyoming terrain itself, solid, weathered, and calm. His uniform jacket strained against a chest that hadn't softened much over the years, and his silver-streaked hair was cropped short. Deep lines framed his gray eyes, the kind carved by years of seeing both the best and worst in people. He'd been a Marine before the badge, and the discipline still lingered in the way he moved. Slow, deliberate, never rushed. "Mornin', Logan," he greeted, tipping his hat. "Heard you took in a stray during the blizzard." Logan gestured toward Ava. "Ava Collins, Sheriff Mason Cole." Mason gave her a kind nod. "Ma'am, you're lucky to be standing. Roads were hell that night." "I know," Ava replied softly. "I wouldn't be here if not for him." She glanced at Logan with genuine gratitude. Mason studied her a moment, then cleared his throat. "I've been running checks on this fella, Derek Blackwell. Thought you'd want to know." Ava stiffened. "You found something?" "Yeah." Mason's expression darkened. "He's got a pattern. Sweet-talking women, making engagement promises, then backing out. Not illegal, but he's also been reported twice for harassment. Emotional abuse, mostly. Doesn't take rejection well. Ava's lips trembled slightly. That sounds like him. Mason's tone softened. You don't need to see him again. If he comes around, you call me. Understood? She nodded, visibly relieved. Logan caught the sheriff's eye. The silent understanding of two men who'd both seen harm come in too many shapes. I'll keep her here until she figures out what's next, Logan said. Mason looked between them, then smirked. Didn't think you were the babysitting type, Hayes. I'm not, Logan replied flatly. Mason chuckled, climbing back into his truck. Well, try not to scare her off with that charm of yours. He tipped his hat again to Ava. You take care now, ma'am. When the truck disappeared down the hill, silence settled again. The day stretched long and easy. Ava busied herself around the cabin, folding blankets, cleaning dishes, feeding Ranger scraps of jerky when Logan wasn't looking. The dog followed her everywhere, tail swaying like a lazy metronome. But by late morning, Ranger's behavior changed. He began nudging Ava's stomach gently with his nose, whining low in his throat. She laughed at first. What's with you, huh? You hungry again? He whined louder, insistent, then rested his head against her belly, refusing to move. Logan raised an eyebrow from the kitchen. He's acting weird. Ava smiled, a little uneasy. Maybe he just wants attention. Ranger doesn't do anything without a reason, Logan said. Old habit. That afternoon, while chopping wood outside, Logan heard a crash from the kitchen. He dropped the axe and sprinted in. Ava was slumped against the counter, pale and trembling. Ava! He caught her before she hit the floor. Her skin was clammy, her breath shallow. I'm fine, she whispered, though her voice betrayed it. Just dizzy. It's nothing. Nothing doesn't make you faint, he muttered. He guided her to the chair, then grabbed his keys. We're going to town. I don't want to be a burden. Not up for debate. His tone left no room for argument. Ranger barked once, as if in agreement. The drive into town took 30 minutes on the muddy road. Ava sat quiet, hands clasped in her lap, eyes unfocused. Ranger rode in the back seat, head between them, occasionally sniffing the air like he was tracking something invisible. They pulled up to a small white building with faded blue letters, Wind River Clinic. Inside, the smell of disinfectant mingled with the faint scent of coffee. A middle-aged nurse with auburn hair and a no-nonsense face led them to an exam room. After a few minutes, Dr. Ellen Marsh entered, a woman in her early 40s, petite but commanding. Her strawberry blonde hair was pinned neatly, and the faint lines around her eyes hinted at long nights and hard work. She had the calm of someone who'd seen everything from broken bones to broken hearts. Logan Hayes, she greeted with familiarity. Didn't think I'd see you voluntarily. Not me this time, he said, nodding toward Ava. Dr. Marsh smiled kindly. What's going on, Ava? Just dizzy spells, nausea. It's probably stress. The doctor nodded slowly, checking vitals. You said you fainted? Ava nodded. Ellen's expression turned thoughtful. We'll run a quick test. The minutes dragged. Logan stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the snowmelt dripping from the roof. He didn't realize he was holding his breath until Ellen returned. She closed the door gently behind her. Ava, I need you to sit down. Ava obeyed, her eyes wide. Ellen hesitated just long enough to choose her words carefully. You're pregnant. About 10 weeks along. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The world seemed to shrink into silence. Ava's mouth opened, but no sound came. "That can't be," she started, voice cracking. "I didn't know. I thought I was just tired." Logan's grip on the windowsill tightened. 10 weeks. That meant before the blizzard. Before Derek. Ava looked down at her shaking hands. Shame and fear tangled across her face. "It's his," she whispered. "Derek's. You don't have to keep helping me. I understand." Logan turned to her slowly, his expression unreadable. Then he crouched beside the chair, his voice low and steady. "It's not your fault," he said. "You didn't choose the storm. You survived it." Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't know what people will say. I don't care what they say." He squeezed her hand once, firm but gentle. "You're not alone in this." Dr. Marsh smiled faintly, discreetly turning away to give them privacy. On the drive back, the sun dipped low behind the mountains. The sky was streaked with copper and lavender. Ava sat silent, staring out the window, one hand resting unconsciously on her stomach. When they reached the cabin, Logan carried in a box of supplies Ellen had insisted on sending: prenatal vitamins, tea, and a list of instructions. He cleared a small space near the window, setting up a corner with fresh blankets and a chair. Ranger trotted over and curled at Ava's feet, resting his head on her lap. "Guess he knew before any of us," Logan murmured. Ava smiled through the tears. "He's a good dog." "Yeah," Logan said, meeting her gaze. "He's got good instincts." And that night, as the fire crackled and the mountains glowed faintly under the rising moon, the small cabin felt different, no longer just a refuge from the cold, but the fragile beginning of something new: safety, trust, and the first spark of family. The thaw came early that year. By March, the snow had melted into thick mud that clung to boots and tires alike. The air was warmer, but the wind still carried a sharp edge that cut through the valley like memory refusing to fade. Inside the cabin, the smell of brewed coffee mingled with pine smoke. Logan Hayes sat at the small table, sharpening his knife with slow, rhythmic strokes. His movements were calm, deliberate, the same way he'd cleaned weapons years ago in the desert heat. Across from him, Ava Collins sat sketching in her worn notebook, a soft hum escaping her lips. Her face had changed in small but certain ways: more color, more confidence. Her body, once frail and trembling, now carried quiet strength. Ranger, the German shepherd, lay near the door, his thick coat shedding in the early spring warmth. His ears twitched every few seconds, ever alert, even in rest. "Doc says you're doing fine," Logan said, not looking up. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Ava replied, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Still tired sometimes. The doctor said that's normal." He nodded, finally setting down the knife. "We'll go back for a checkup next week. Mason's wife offered to drive if I'm working." Ava smiled faintly. "You sound like you've done this before." He met her eyes. "I've done a lot of looking out for people. Just not like this." Before she could respond, Ranger's head shot up. His body went rigid, tail stiff. The low growl that rolled from his throat was enough to freeze the air. Logan rose instantly, every sense igniting. "What is it, boy?" Ranger stalked to the window, teeth bared. Logan followed, peering through the glass. Down the long dirt road that cut through the trees, two vehicles were crawling toward the cabin, a black pickup and a sleek gray SUV. His jaw tightened. He recognized the black Chevy. "Stay inside," he said quietly, already moving to the door. Ava's voice trembled. "It's him, isn't it?" "Yeah." He grabbed his jacket, his tone even but cold. "Don't open that door for anyone but me." Outside, the mud sucked at his boots as he stepped into the clearing. The truck rolled to a stop 20 feet from the porch. Derek Blackwell climbed out first. Even from a distance, the man radiated arrogance. He was tall, 6 feet easy, with the broad chest of someone who liked to be noticed. His sandy hair was slicked back, his tan too even for winter, and the gleam of his expensive coat clashed with the dirt beneath his boots. The smile on his face wasn't warmth. It was ownership. Beside him, a shorter man stepped out from the SUV. Edward Grayson, his lawyer. Mid-40s, thin, clean-shaven, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and an expression of studied indifference. His suit looked out of place against the mud, like he thought his shoes could scare the wilderness into obeying him. "Afternoon, Mr. Hayes," Derek called, voice smooth but dripping with contempt. "Heard you've been keeping company with my fiancé." "Fiancé?" Logan's tone was steady as he stopped halfway to the porch. "Last I heard, you left her to die in a snowstorm." Derek chuckled. "That's dramatic. She walked away, Logan. You don't know the whole story." "I know enough." The lawyer cleared his throat, stepping forward. "Mr. Blackwell is here to resolve this matter civilly. The child Ms. Collins carries is his, and he's prepared to assume legal guardianship." "She's not property," Logan snapped. Grayson blinked, adjusting his glasses. "No one said—" "You implied it," Logan interrupted. "Now turn around and drive back to town." Derek smirked, stepping closer. "You think you can hide her forever? I've got rights. My son—" Ranger barked, loud and sharp, cutting him off. The German shepherd stood on the porch now, hackles up, a low rumble building in his chest. "Call your mutt off," Derek barked. "Don't think he's the one who needs calling off," Logan said. Derek's jaw flexed. He took another step forward, mud splattering his tailored pants. "You don't scare me, soldier. You forget. I know people in this town. I can make things hard for you." "Try me," Logan said, his voice quiet. Too quiet. "But remember this. You left her. You forfeited your right to anything." The tension was thick enough to choke on. Ranger growled again, baring his teeth. Ava, watching from the window, pressed her hands to her stomach, heart pounding. Then Derek snapped. "You don't tell me what's mine!" He lunged forward, shoving past Logan toward the porch. Ranger exploded in motion. His bark turned into a snarl, the sound echoing through the clearing. Derek froze mid-step, face blanching. "Back up," Logan warned. "Now!" At that moment, a familiar sound cut through the chaos. A sheriff's siren, faint but growing louder. Derek turned to see a white patrol truck cresting the hill. Sheriff Mason Cole pulled up, engine still running. He stepped out, one hand on his belt, the other holding a folder. "Morning, gentlemen," he said evenly. "Someone want to tell me why we're having a meeting out here without an invite?" Derek tried to regain his composure. "Sheriff, I'm here to claim my legal rights. That woman isn't yours," Mason interrupted. He opened the folder, revealing a document stamped and signed. "Court issued a temporary restraining order this morning. You so much as breathe near her, you'll be spending the night in a cell." Derek's face darkened. "You can't." "I can," Mason said, voice steel. "And I just did. Step away from the property. Grayson cleared his throat again, nervous now. "Sheriff, surely we can—" "You can get back in your car," Mason said flatly. "And if you're lucky, you'll make it out before that mud eats your fancy tires." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Derek turned, glaring at Logan with pure venom. "You think this is over?" Logan didn't blink. "It is if you walk away." Ranger stood beside him, silent but ready. Derek spat into the mud, spun on his heel, and climbed into the truck. The lawyer followed quickly. The engines revved, tires spinning before finding grip. When they finally drove off, Mason exhaled. He turned to Logan. "You all right?" "Yeah," Logan said. "Thanks for showing up when you did." "Didn't do it for you," Mason replied, glancing at the cabin. "Did it for her. She deserves a damn break." Inside, Ava sat at the table, tears streaking her cheeks. She hadn't realized she was crying until Logan walked in. He knelt beside her, voice low. "It's over, for now." "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are you still doing this? You don't owe me anything." Logan hesitated, then took her trembling hand. "This isn't pity, Ava. It's choice." Her breath caught. No one had ever said that to her. Not her father. Not Derek. Not anyone. She broke down, sobbing softly into her hands. Logan didn't say another word. He just stayed there beside her, silent and steady as Ranger curled protectively near her feet. Outside, the wind swept across the valley, scattering the last patches of snow. And for the first time in a long time, the storm, both the one outside and the one inside their hearts, began to fade. The Wyoming spring came late that year, but when it did, it came like a blessing. The meadows stretched wide and green beneath a sky, washed clean by months of snow. Meltwater from the mountains spilled into the streams, singing soft over the stones. The air carried the scent of pine and new life. Inside the small wooden cabin perched on the ridge, warmth filled every corner. The same cabin where fear and frost had once ruled, now smelled of wood smoke, coffee, and something softer, hope. Ava Collins sat by the window, her belly round beneath a loose cotton dress. Her dark brown hair was braided over one shoulder, wisps of it falling over her face as she watched the wind ripple through the tall grass outside. There was calm in her now, not the fragile quiet of someone who hides pain, but the grounded peace of someone who has survived it. Ranger lay sprawled on the porch, his thick sable coat glinting under the sun. He was older now, a faint gray brushing the fur around his muzzle, but his eyes were bright and alive. He lifted his head every time Ava shifted, as if counting her every breath. Logan Hayes stepped inside, boots scuffing against the floor. He was dressed simply, worn jeans, a faded green shirt rolled up at the sleeves. His beard had grown in fuller, and there was a steadiness about him now, as if the long winter had carved out a man who finally knew where he belonged. "Doc'll be here soon," he said, setting a kettle on the stove. "You holding up?" Ava smiled faintly. "You've asked me that every hour today." "Well," he said, pouring water into her cup, "I like to stay prepared." "You mean nervous?" she teased. He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "That too." Before she could reply, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Ranger barked once, tail thumping against the wood. Logan opened it to reveal Dr. Ellen Marsh, her strawberry blonde hair tied back beneath a wool cap. The small woman had traded her clinic coat for denim and boots, but her steady gray eyes carried the same calm authority as always. "Morning," Ellen said briskly. Looks like someone's ready to meet the world. Ava exhaled, clutching her belly. It's time, isn't it? Close enough, Ellen said with a reassuring smile. Let's get you settled. Logan moved fast but careful, spreading clean blankets and heating more water. Ellen guided Ava to the bed, her voice low and steady. You'll do fine, sweetheart. I've delivered babies in worse places than this. Ranger paced by the door, tail low, head cocked. When Ava groaned through another contraction, the dog whined softly, nose pressed against Logan's leg. She's strong, Logan murmured, kneeling beside him. She's gonna be fine, boy. Hours passed in a blur of breath, sweat, and whispered encouragements. The storm that had once brought Ava to this house felt like a lifetime ago, replaced by a different kind of storm, one of life beginning. When the baby's cry finally split the air, it was sharp and perfect. Ellen smiled, eyes glistening. It's a boy. Ava's hands trembled as she reached out. Logan, crouched beside her, could barely breathe. The tiny life that had once been only a shadow in her fear now lay in her arms, pink and loud and beautiful. Eli, she whispered. His name is Eli. Ellen tied the cord and handed Logan the scissors. His hand shook, the tremor betraying everything his stoic face tried to hide. Go on, Ellen urged gently. He cut it clean, exhaling shakily. For a man who'd spent half his life facing death, the act of touching new life felt like something sacred. Ranger crawled closer, lying down at Ava's feet, head tilted as if understanding. Ava laughed through her tears. He's already guarding him. Good instincts, Logan said softly, brushing his hand over Eli's small head. Just like his mom. By afternoon, the sun had shifted west. The cabin was quiet except for the occasional cry of the newborn and the low hum of voices. The door opened again, letting in a soft breeze and a handful of visitors. Sheriff Mason Cole in his crisp uniform, Ellen's husband Mark carrying a basket of food, and Sarah Whitfield, an older woman from town with kind eyes and silver hair. Sarah had been widowed years ago, but she'd made it her life's purpose to care for others. She brought a knitted blanket, sky blue and soft as clouds. Figured the boy could use something warm, Sarah said, laying it over the cradle. And maybe you too could use a meal that doesn't come from a kun. Thank you, Ava said sincerely, emotion catching in her throat. Mason tipped his hat. You've made quite the stir in town, you know. Folks have been betting whether you'd make it back here or move east. Logan smirked. Sorry to disappoint them. Don't be, Mason said. Town's better off with good people staying. As evening crept in, the visitors left quietly, promising to return the next day. Ellen lingered a bit longer, checking both mother and child before heading out. When the door closed behind her, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. The fire cracked softly, and the golden light wrapped around them like a blanket. Ava sat on the bed, cradling Eli against her chest. Logan knelt beside her, his rough hand resting gently on her shoulder. You did good, he said. She looked at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. We did good. He hesitated, then spoke, not with the rehearsed certainty of a soldier, but with the quiet conviction of a man finally ready to stay. I don't have much, he said, his voice low. Just this land, this cabin, and what I can give with my hands. But you and Eli, you'll never face a storm alone again. Ava's lips trembled as she reached for his hand. You don't have to promise me anything. He smiled, shaking his head. It's not a promise. It's a choice. Outside, the valley glowed under the orange sweep of sunset. The grass swayed like waves, and the scent of wild sage drifted through the open window. Ranger stretched out on the porch, one paw draped lazily over the step, eyes half closed but alert as ever. Logan stepped outside, carrying Eli in his arms. Ava followed slowly, wrapped in a blanket, her hair loose now, glowing in the last light of day. The three of them sat on the porch steps, Ranger lying close. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. Ava looked at Logan, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saved me from the storm, Logan." He turned toward her, his eyes soft in the fading light. "No," he said quietly. "You brought the calm back to mine." Ranger's ears flicked at the sound of their voices, and somewhere in the distance the coyotes began to sing. The wind moved gently through the grass, carrying the scent of rain and promise. And in that cabin on the ridge, where a broken man and a lost woman had once found shelter from a blizzard, a family, imperfect, unexpected, but real, began.